The paper crane should not have been under Daniel Mercer's shoe. It was folded from his son's boarding pass and streaked with the same dark blue polish used at the shoeshine stand near the private terminal entrance. Inside, in Owen's uneven handwriting, were 6 words. Gate 9 is not a gate. Daniel looked toward the silver jet preparing to depart. His 10-year-old son had already boarded under armed protection after a threat against the family. A girl's voice rose behind him. "That isn't Owen." Maya Torres stood between 2 security officers, rain dripping from her hair. She was 12 and worked there beside her aunt. Daniel's security chief, Adrian Cross, stepped forward calmly. "Sir, she may be connected to the threat. Let us handle this." Maya planted her worn sneakers against the floor. "Ask the boy to touch his hearing aid." Daniel turned from the jet. "What?" "Owen's device is on his left ear, so he always reaches across with his right hand," Maya said. "The boy I saw boarding kept touching his right ear." Adrian's expression remained controlled. "She could have found that online." "Then ask why he's wearing new shoes," Maya said. "Owen hates stiff leather before a flight. Last week, he asked me to soften the heels because stiff leather makes him limp." That detail was not online. Daniel had bought those shoes himself. He ordered the pilot to stop, but the jet had begun taxiing. The cockpit did not respond. Then, the terminal cameras went black. Adrian reached for his radio. Maya looked toward the empty service corridor. "Sir," she whispered, "your son never went toward the runway." At the far end, a baggage door marked Gate 9 was slowly closing. Caught beneath it was one of Owen's shoes. Daniel moved before anyone else. He crossed the terminal floor and reached the baggage door just as it sealed. The shoe remained trapped beneath the rubber edge, one lace dark with rainwater. He pulled it free and knew it immediately. He had bought the pair in Geneva 2 weeks earlier, after Owen's old shoes split along the sole. Adrian arrived beside him. "We lock down the terminal now," he said. "No one leaves." Daniel faced the sealed door. "Open it." The nearest officer hesitated. "Gate 9 is restricted service access, sir. Airport operations controls it." I said open it. Adrian lifted a hand. "If this is a coordinated breach, opening an unsecured corridor could put Owen at greater risk." The words were measured and difficult to challenge. They were the kind Daniel had trusted for 6 years. Beyond the glass wall, the jet continued toward the runway. Daniel called the pilot directly. The line switched to an automated message stating that the aircraft communication channel was unavailable. "That is not possible." Adrian issued orders into his radio, assigning teams to the fuel lane, vehicle exits, maintenance tunnels, and passenger lounges. Every command sounded correct. Every response came back clean. Maya remained several yards away between 2 officers. She watched Daniel, not Adrian. "Let her go," Daniel said. Adrian turned. "Until we know how she obtained that boarding pass, she stays secured. She just told us my son is missing." "She may have told us because she already knew." Maya's face tightened, but she did not argue. She looked like someone who had expected to be blamed. At the nearest security desk, the terminal manager displayed Owen's departure record. His name appeared beside a completed biometric check, passport clearance, and armed transfer confirmation. Time of boarding, 8:42 a.m. Daniel checked his watch. It was 8:49. "Show me the boarding camera." A hooded boy moved through a covered passage between 4 guards. His face appeared for less than a second. A recognition box flashed around it, followed by a 99% match. "There," Adrian said. "The system verified him." Daniel replayed the clip. One guard blocked the camera at the exact moment the child stepped onto the aircraft stairs. Live cabin feed. The manager typed rapidly. "We lost it 30 seconds ago. Restore it." Adrian leaned closer. "The priority is locating the breach point, not second-guessing every system in the building." Daniel heard the warning beneath the advice. His board was scheduled to vote that afternoon on whether he should retain sole emergency authority over Mercer Sentinel. Admitting his own network had lost his son would send the company into panic. 3 days earlier, Adrian had brought him the kidnapping threat, a photograph of Owen leaving school and a message promising Daniel would lose what he valued most before the board vote. Adrian had recommended immediate relocation to Switzerland. Owen had refused. He had stood in Daniel's office and said, "You didn't even ask if I wanted to go." Daniel had answered that safety was not a choice. He could hear the sentence now with unbearable clarity. "The boy in that video is shorter," Maya said. Daniel faced her. "How can you tell?" The coat covers his hands more, and Owen drags his right heel when he's tired. That boy doesn't. Adrian exhaled. She is building a story from whatever we show her. Maya looked at him. Then stop showing me things and ask where Owen is. Daniel studied Adrian. They had known each other since before Mercer Sentinel existed. Adrian had pulled him from a burning vehicle the night Laura died and stayed at the hospital while Owen underwent surgery. He was the one person Daniel never required to explain himself twice. That history stood between them now, like armor. Pull the raw scan data, Daniel said. The biometric system only stores the verification result on this level, the manager replied. Access the administrator archive. That requires executive authorization. Daniel entered his private security key. The screen rejected it. Access suspended. Adrian's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. The board's temporary controls began at 8:30. Daniel turned on him. You knew my access had been suspended? I knew restrictions were scheduled. I did not know they had gone live. The cabin feed suddenly returned. A child sat by the window in Owen's gray hoodie. The image shook as the aircraft accelerated. The boy raised his hand and touched the device on his right ear. Stop the plane, Daniel said. The manager reached for the emergency channel. Adrian did not move. Daniel fixed his attention on Adrian. Why aren't you calling the pilot? Adrian lifted his radio at last. Before he could speak, a guard rushed from the service hall. Sir, Gate 9 is empty. Daniel held up Owen's shoe. Then explain this. The guard glanced toward Adrian before answering. It was brief, instinctive, almost nothing. But Daniel saw it. For the first time since the threat arrived, he understood that the danger might not have entered his security system from the outside. The jet was ordered to land at a municipal airport 40 miles north of Astor. By then, the terminal had sealed every public exit. Federal agents were on their way, airport police controlled Gate 9, and Mercer Sentinel's board had issued a statement describing the event as an active security irregularity. Daniel read the phrase twice. His son had vanished, and the company had already reduced it to language designed for shareholders. Adrian stood several feet away, speaking into two radios. He had divided the search into zones, requested traffic camera access, and ordered every member of Owen's protection detail separated for questioning. Nothing in his conduct looked careless. That made Daniel trust him less. Maya sat beside her aunt near the shoeshine stand. Elena Torres had arrived after airport police called her and had not released Maya's hand since. She wore a cleaning company uniform under a borrowed raincoat and looked at Daniel with the guarded anger of someone who knew powerful people could apologize without losing anything. An officer placed Owen's shoe into an evidence bag. You should check under the liner, Maya said. The officer kept walking. Daniel turned. Why? Because it was pulled loose. Adrian ended his call. Evidence technicians will examine it. They didn't examine the crane, Maya said. They asked where I stole it. Elena squeezed her hand. That is enough. No, Daniel said. It isn't. He asked the officer to return the shoe. The officer refused. Gate 9 and everything recovered near it now fell under airport police jurisdiction. Daniel's ownership of the aircraft and half the systems in the building gave him no authority over the evidence. Adrian offered to have counsel expedite access. Daniel said nothing. He had spent years designing systems that prevented one frightened person from overriding procedure. Now, every safeguard stood between him and Owen. A call came through from the municipal airport. The jet had landed. The child aboard was not Owen. His name was Eli Warren, age 9. His mother worked for a contractor that supplied role players for corporate security drills. She had been told Eli would participate in a short exercise, wear a hooded coat, and remain silent until the plane landed. She had signed a release that morning. Daniel listened while an agent questioned her. Who contacted you? A man from the contractor. Did you meet him? No. We used the company portal. What were you paid? $3,000. Did you know another child was missing? The woman began to cry. I thought it was training. The pilot and cabin guards claimed they had also been told it was a controlled extraction exercise ordered by Mercer Sentinel. Adrian lowered his radio. Someone used our internal protocols. Daniel kept his eyes on him. Someone used your people. Our people received authenticated instructions. From whose account? That is being checked. Maya stood. Where did the real Owen go? An officer moved toward her. Remain with your guardian. She asked the only question that matters, Daniel said. Adrian's gaze settled on him. Every minute we spend debating a child's theory gives the actual team more distance. Maya pointed toward the shoeshine stand. Owen stopped there before they took him. Daniel surveyed the polished chair and the narrow counter crowded with brushes. You saw him? Not today. But something from his shoe is still there. Maya knelt beside the stand and reached under the polishing machine. Her fingers came back black with dust. She tried again and drew out a thin leather insole. A line of dark blue polish crossed one side. On the other, written in pencil, was a sequence of letters and numbers. MSV 14. Daniel recognized the format. Mercer Service Vehicle 14. That vehicle was decommissioned last year, Adrian said. You remember that quickly, Maya replied. I oversee the fleet. Daniel photographed the code before police bagged the insole. His executive credentials were still suspended, so Adrian opened the fleet application. Vehicle 14 appeared with a red marker, retired parts salvage. Its last authorized location was a storage lot outside the airport perimeter. Check the gate logs, Daniel said. No entry appeared. The plates had been surrendered 8 months earlier. Maya studied the insole. Owen would not know the number unless he saw it. Daniel recognized the downward slant of the pencil marks. He wrote it. Adrian's jaw tightened. Or someone copied his handwriting after obtaining the crane. You think Maya forged both? I think whoever planned this may want us following a prepared trail. The argument was plausible. Every clue Maya produced could be recast as bait, and every delay allowed Owen's trail to cool. A technician arrived with passport data. Owen's passport had been scanned at the private checkpoint, but there was no matching exit record from Customs and Border Protection. The technician suggested a synchronization delay. Daniel requested the raw timestamp. The passport scan and the camera image of the hooded child entering the aircraft passage had both registered at 8:42. The locations were nearly 300 yards apart. The terminal manager blamed system replication. Adrian called it evidence of a network breach. Maya was watching the floor near the shoeshine chair. What is it? Daniel asked. She pointed to a folded shape wedged behind the brass baseboard. An officer retrieved another paper bird, made from the corner of a terminal map. One wing folded normally, the other bent backward against the crease. Maya's face changed. What does that mean? Daniel asked. Owen showed me once. If one wing is backward, the person beside him is not safe. Adrian looked toward the officers rather than the paper. That could refer to anyone. Yes, Daniel said. It could. He remembered Owen at breakfast 2 weeks earlier, folding a receipt while Daniel answered messages. The boy had asked whether a paper bird could fly if one wing pointed the wrong way. Daniel had said he was busy. Now the question had returned as evidence. He called a former Mercer Sentinel engineer. I need an independent copy of every vehicle record linked to Astor Terminal. Adrian heard him. Going outside Incident Command will compromise the investigation. The investigation already lost my son. You do not know my team did this. I know someone wearing your credentials moved another child onto my plane. For the first time, Adrian's calm hardened. Panic makes patterns where none exist. Daniel held the backward wing between 2 fingers. Ignoring patterns is what brought us here. The engineer called back 12 minutes later. Vehicle 14 had transmitted a maintenance ping at 8:46 that morning from a service lane behind Gate 9. The signal lasted 11 seconds before the tracking unit went dark. Police requested traffic camera footage, but warrants and data sharing rules would take time. Maya walked toward the rain-streaked window. If they used that vehicle, they didn't take the main road. Adrian folded his arms. He bustled away. Drivers complain about the checkpoint every day. There's an old service road behind the fuel tanks. The terminal manager said it was closed for construction. The sign says closed, Maya replied. The cleaners still use it when the loading dock floods. Daniel followed her gaze to the dark corridor. Owen had not been moved through an invisible route. He had been taken through routes no one important ever noticed. And the only person who had noticed them was the girl everyone had tried to remove. The old service road began behind the fuel tanks, where the painted lane markings had faded into the concrete. Airport police blocked the entrance with 2 vehicles and red tape. Beyond it, rainwater ran toward a drainage tunnel beneath Gate 9. Daniel showed the supervising officer the maintenance ping from Vehicle 14. We have requested access to the corridor, the officer said. My son may have been taken through it. And entering before the search team clears, it could destroy evidence. Daniel looked past him at the tunnel. Every instinct told him to cross the tape. Every accusation Adrian had predicted would follow if he did. Maya stood under Elena's umbrella, studying 3 baggage carts parked against the wall. "What are you looking at?" Daniel asked. "Mud covers the wheels, but the strip beside them is clean. Someone moved one after the rain started." The supervising officer glanced at the carts. "Maintenance uses this area." "Then why did they put it back facing the wrong way?" Adrian approached with a terminal map. "The corridor connects to catering, waste removal, and an abandoned training room. Search teams are entering from both ends." Daniel pointed to the tracks. "Vehicle 14 came through here. A transmitter using its identifier came through here," Adrian corrected. "You are still treating every fact as if it might be an illusion. That is what a trained investigator does." Maya stepped toward the tape. Elena caught her arm. "You are not going anywhere. I'm only looking." "You have looked enough." Fear, not anger, sharpened Elena's voice. Her cleaning contract was already under review because Maya had entered a restricted area. A forensic team arrived and began photographing the tire marks. Daniel watched them move slowly through the route Owen might have traveled. One technician measured the width between the tracks, another swabbed the cart handles. A police dog followed the service lane for 30 yards, then lost the scent where jet fuel and cleaning chemicals had pooled near the drain. The handler explained that the contamination made the result useless. Daniel wanted certainty. The corridor offered only fragments. Adrian received a call from the board. When he returned, he said, "They appointed an interim incident director." "Who?" "Me." Daniel almost laughed. "My access is suspended, and yours is expanded. The board needs continuity. My son is not an operational event. No, he is the reason you should not be making decisions under this much pressure." The supervising officer called Daniel over. Searchers had found no sign of Owen in the first section. Tire tracks ended near a loading bay crossed by delivery vehicles. Maya was no longer beside Elena. Her umbrella lay near the baggage carts. "Elena, where is she?" Elena turned sharply. "She was right here." Daniel saw a narrow service hatch behind the carts, its latch hidden by hanging plastic. It stood open by less than an inch. An alarm sounded inside the corridor. 2 officers pulled Maya through a side door 3 minutes later. Dust streaked her apron. One knee of her jeans was torn. She breached the restricted zone, an officer said. Again, Elena rushed toward her, but another officer blocked the way. Maya looked at Daniel. They missed the lower passage. A clear evidence pouch hung from a technician's hand. Inside was a tiny silver battery. Owen's hearing device used the same kind. The technician had also collected dark blue wax from a pipe below the main floor and gray fibers caught on rough concrete. "The passage is too low for the vehicle," Maya said. They moved him from the cart into something smaller. Adrian studied the battery. "Or, she placed it there." Elena stared at him. "You think my niece carries hearing aid batteries into airport tunnels? I think a child interfering with an investigation may not understand what she is contaminating." Daniel stepped between them. "Enough." The officers said Maya would be taken to the airport police office for unlawful entry. Elena asked whether she was being arrested. No one answered directly. Adrian drew Daniel aside. "I can keep this from becoming criminal. What do you want?" "Remove her from the investigation. She is unpredictable." Daniel watched Maya trying not to cry in front of the officers. "She found what your team missed. She may have compromised it. And if you publicly attach yourself to her, the board will say you directed a minor into danger. Family court will hear it too." "Why would family court be involved?" "Owen's safety is no longer only a criminal matter. Questions will be asked about the decisions that led here." Adrian had not threatened him. He had merely described a consequence. Daniel walked to the officers. "Maya acted after I asked her to help me understand the service routes." Maya looked up. "That was not strictly true." The supervising officer said, "Did you instruct her to enter?" "No. But I brought her into the search and failed to protect her from the risks that followed." "Put that in your report." Adrian's expression tightened. Daniel continued, "She is 12. If charges are considered, my statement goes with hers." The officer allowed Elena to accompany Maya to the interview room. No handcuffs were used. Within half an hour, alerts appeared on the terminal screens. "Mercer here missing after private flight security failure." Then, CEO admits involving child witness in airport search. Mercer Sentinel's stock fell 9% before trading was halted. Daniel switched off the screen. He had spent years believing exposure was weakness. That morning, concealment looked more dangerous. The lab found no useful fingerprint on the battery. The wax matched several commercial polishes used at the terminal, including Elena's. The fibers were consistent with Owen's hoodie, but with countless other garments. Nothing proved he had been in the passage. Then a technician found a scratch cut into the battery casing. 2 short lines, a pause, 1 longer line. Daniel recognized the pattern from a game Owen used when his device whistled and he could not hear clearly. It meant move. Owen marked it, he said. Adrian replied, "You cannot know that." No, but he knew someone might. A data analyst arrived with the 7-minute camera gap. The cameras had not failed. The archive had been overwritten by a loop from the previous morning. The replacement required administrator-level access. The account used belonged to Daniel. Maya returned with Elena after airport police released her pending review. Elena kept one arm around her niece and refused Daniel's offer to arrange a private car. Maya's fear had settled into embarrassment. "I made it worse," she said quietly. "You found the passage," Daniel replied. "I also gave them a reason to ignore what I found." Daniel could not deny it. "Next time, you tell me what you see before you move." Maya looked toward Adrian. "And if there isn't time, then make sure someone knows where you went." It was not trust yet, but it was the first rule they had made together. "You didn't erase the cameras," Maya said. Adrian looked at her. "No one accused him of that." "You were about to." Daniel turned to the analyst. "Was the login remote?" "We cannot determine that. Part of the audit trail was cleared." Adrian said, "Someone is framing you." "That would be useful to more than one person," Daniel replied. Before Adrian could answer, Daniel's former engineer called. A county traffic camera had captured Vehicle 14 beyond the airport perimeter at 8:53. Rain blurred the image, but the rear markings were visible. It had turned onto a medical transport lane leading to an old Mercer Sentinel training facility. The engineer sent a second frame. Behind the tinted rear window, a small hand pressed against the glass. 3 fingers were folded, 2 remained raised. Daniel had seen Owen use that signal once before, after Laura died, and he could not say the words aloud. It meant, "I am still here." The old Mercer Sentinel training facility stood beyond Wet Pines, 10 miles from the airport. Daniel had built it 12 years earlier to teach corporate security teams how to respond to kidnappings, aircraft diversions, and executive extractions. After Laura's death, he stopped visiting. The board later transferred it to a subsidiary and listed it as inactive. It did not look inactive that morning. A medical transport van stood behind the main building. Fresh tire marks crossed the gravel. 2 exterior cameras tracked Daniel's car before it reached the gate. The guard inside the booth scanned the temporary police authorization and shook his head. "This permit covers the vehicle yard and main offices. The West Wing is leased separately." "To whom?" Daniel asked. The guard checked his screen. "Crestline Response Services." Adrian, who had arrived in a second vehicle, said Crestline supplied emergency relocation teams for threatened executives. Daniel turned to him. "Did you know they were operating here?" "I knew we had contractors on the property. I did not approve individual leases." The lead detective called the prosecutor. The answer came back 20 minutes later. Officers could inspect areas connected to Vehicle 14, but entering the leased wing required either consent or a separate warrant. Maya stood beside Elena beneath the concrete overhang. She had been allowed to come only because the detective wanted her to identify the route shown in the traffic footage. Elena had agreed on the condition that Maya remain beside her. Daniel did not argue. He had already asked her to notice what trained adults missed. He would not ask her to risk herself again. A technician found Vehicle 14 inside a maintenance shed. Its original plates were gone. The rear compartment had been wiped with disinfectant, leaving the sharp smell of alcohol and citrus. There was no blood, usable print, or device proving Owen had been inside. On the metal floor, however, Maya noticed 2 parallel scratches. "He braces his shoes like that when a car turns too fast," she said. The detective photographed them but made no conclusion. Scratches were not identity. The tracking unit had been replaced with a transmitter carrying the retired vehicle code. Whoever prepared it understood Mercer's fleet system and expected investigators to search by identifier rather than physical registration. Daniel asked for the list of people who could authorize that equipment. Adrian answered before the technician did. Fleet operations, training command, executive protection, and system administration. 4 departments, Daniel said. Enough people to hide inside. Or enough people for an outsider to copy one procedure from another. Adrian kept offering reasonable alternatives. Daniel began to understand how effectively reason could be used as camouflage. Maya was studying the building. The west wing had narrow windows painted black from the inside. A ventilation fan turned above a door marked Simulation Lab. The rest of the facility was dark, yet condensation trembled on the grill. "Something is running in there," she said. The detective checked the lease boundary. The simulation lab sat partly within Crestline's space. A Crestline representative arrived. He introduced himself as Martin Voss, compliance director, and carried a folder thick with permits. "We are conducting a confidential readiness exercise," he said. "No child is present. You may inspect the shared mechanical area, but our client materials are protected." Daniel asked who the client was. Voss offered a practiced look of regret. Confidentiality survives inconvenience. The detective requested written consent to search the simulation lab. Voss declined. Adrian drew Daniel aside. "Let the warrant process work. The vehicle that carried Owen is 30 yards from that room. The vehicle may have been planted to lead us here." Daniel watched Voss speak quietly to the guard. "You know him?" "I have seen him in vendor reviews." "That was not my question." Adrian's answer came a second late. "I have worked with him." Maya pointed toward a drainage channel running from the west wing. A thin stream of water carried several small gray fibers into the grate. They matched the color of Owen's hoodie, but so did half the clothing in the building. Then a scrap of laminated paper appeared against the mesh. The detective lifted it with forceps. Only 3 printed lines remained. "Look toward the window. Tell your father you are safe. Do not mention the transfer." The final word had been crossed out twice in blue pencil. Daniel recognized Owen's habit of pressing harder when he was angry. Voss said the card belonged to a training scenario involving a fictional child. "Then show us the scenario," the detective replied. Voss repeated that the material was confidential. The fragment was not enough for a forced entry by itself, but it changed the prosecutor's answer. Officers were authorized to preserve the site while an emergency warrant was reviewed. No one entered. No one left. 40 minutes passed. Maya sat on a concrete barrier, rubbing warmth into her hands. Daniel brought her a paper cup of tea from a vending machine. She accepted it only after he placed it beside her, rather than offering it like a gift. "Why did Owen talk to you?" he asked. "He didn't talk much." "Then how did he show you the folded wing signal?" "He was waiting while Adrian took a call. Owen made 2 birds from receipts. One had a bad wing. He said that one meant someone nearby was pretending to help." Daniel nodded toward the leased wing. "Did he say who?" "No, I thought it was a game." "So did I. Every time he tried to tell me something without saying it directly." Maya turned the cup between her palms. "Maybe he stopped saying things directly because adults kept explaining what he meant." Before Daniel could answer, the West Wing fire alarm sounded. Voss called it a faulty sensor. Under fire code, county firefighters entered only to check for immediate danger. The detective remained outside the leased boundary while Daniel was kept behind the line. Maya watched the upper windows. A shade shifted on the second floor. "There," she said. Daniel saw only his reflection at first. Then a small silhouette crossed behind the glass. He moved toward the entrance. Adrian caught his arm. "If you force your way in, every defense attorney will say you contaminated the search. My son may be inside. And if that is not Owen, you will have damaged the first lawful case we have." Daniel pulled free, but stopped. The fire captain emerged minutes later. There was no smoke, but from the approved safety route his team had seen powered cameras, a mock aircraft cabin, and a child-sized gray hoodie in plain view. They photographed only the conditions necessary to document the alarm and touched nothing. The detective sent those images, the laminated script fragment, and the evidence from Vehicle 14 to the emergency judge. The expanded warrant was signed before officers crossed the leased boundary. Only then was Daniel allowed into the simulation lab behind the search team. The room contained a mock aircraft cabin. Owen's gray hoodie lay across one seat. A false hearing device rested in a plastic tray. 3 cameras faced the mock window. On a monitor, technicians found a saved clip labeled "Family Confirmation." It showed Owen seated by the mock window, reading from a card. "I'm safe, Dad. Adrian says the little captain has to follow instructions." Daniel replayed the sentence. Laura had never called Owen little captain. She had called him little pilot. Owen knew the difference. Adrian knew it too. "He changed the words," Daniel said. The detective asked why. "To tell me he was reading something written by someone else." A firefighter reported that the second floor was clear. No child was there. The silhouette Maya saw had likely been an employee moving equipment toward an exterior stairwell. The expanded warrant covered the simulation room, not the adjoining offices. While officers documented the equipment, Daniel heard voices through a ventilation panel behind the mock cabin. Voss spoke first. "Once the board sees the manifest, they'll have grounds." Adrian's voice answered from the corridor outside the leased boundary. "Grounds are not custody. The emergency petition is already signed." A pause followed. Then Adrian said, "Daniel only needs to do what he always does. Choose the company." Footsteps moved away before Daniel could reach the door. The exchange did not prove kidnapping. It did not reveal where Owen was, who signed the petition, or what the board had been promised. Yet it connected the false flight to a legal action prepared in advance. The detective emerged from the adjoining hall, holding a copied court cover sheet recovered from a shred bin. Most of the names had been cut away. One line remained intact. "Proposed temporary guardian." Beneath it, typed in capital letters, was the name Adrian Cross. By noon, Daniel had lost access to his office, his company email, and every internal system carrying the Mercer name. The board called it temporary containment. Its statement said the suspension protected the integrity of the investigation and prevented further misuse of executive credentials. Across the table, an independent cybersecurity examiner named Lila Chen worked from copies of the biometric logs obtained under subpoena. She had once designed verification systems for Mercer Sentinel, then left after Daniel refused to delay a product launch over privacy concerns. "You asked for someone who does not owe you anything," she said. "I remember." "Good. Then do not interrupt when the answer is unpleasant." The boarding scan was not live. It came from a stored template created during a school security update, then was inserted into the terminal stream so a hooded child within Owen's general height range would pass. Daniel studied the access history. "My account approved it. Your account token did." Someone entered the credentials and supplied the second factor through an emergency recovery key. Daniel's own security key had remained with him that morning. Who could use the recovery key? The head of executive protection and 2 board officers. Adrian's role sat inside the answer, but not alone. Every route still pointed toward him while leaving room for another explanation. The recovery key had been activated from the training facility at 7:58 a.m., 44 minutes before Eli was recorded boarding. The user identity had been removed from the audit trail. "Can you recover it?" Daniel asked. "Not without the company's encryption archive. The board will refuse." "They already have." Lila opened the scheduling record. "Whoever did this also knew your habits." The request was timed for the board briefing, when everyone expected you to be inside a secure room without your phone. Daniel remembered Owen waiting outside that briefing. He had promised they would speak before departure. He had sent Adrian instead. A message from Elena interrupted him. The Airport Concession Authority had terminated her shoeshine contract for security violations and reputational risk. Her equipment would be removed by evening. Daniel found Maya and Elena near the employee exit, packing brushes and tins into cardboard boxes. Airport police had released the stand after photographing it. "I can cover the lost income," Daniel said. Elena did not look up. "We are not selling what Maya saw. That is not what I meant. It is what money usually means when someone like you offers it before asking what we need." Maya placed the old camera recorder into a box. "They said Aunt Elena broke the lease because I crossed the tape." He read the termination notice. The cited clause concerned criminal conduct by an employee. Maya was neither an employee nor charged with a crime. "I can have this reversed." Elena finally faced him. "By calling someone? By challenging a contract they are misusing. That is still calling someone." "Yes," Daniel said. "But this time the call will not ask for a favor. It will ask them to explain their decision in writing." He contacted an employment and concessions attorney who had never represented Mercer Sentinel and asked her to review the termination without mentioning compensation or publicity. Elena accepted only after the attorney agreed that the family, not Daniel, would control the case. Maya watched him put away his phone. "You thought paying was the same as fixing," she said. "I often have." "Is it?" "No." Maya stopped packing when Lila arrived with a new finding. The false biometric approval had been paired with a medical relocation file. The document described Owen as experiencing acute trauma, auditory distress, and a risk of flight after receiving a threat against his family. It authorized transfer from the airport to a private stabilization center under protective custody. Daniel scanned the signature. Dr. Nora Bell, Owen's pediatric psychologist. She never recommended this. Lila pointed to the timestamp. The form was created at 6:12 a.m. The kidnapping threat had reached Adrian's office at 7:03. Someone had prepared Owen's medical transfer 51 minutes before the event supposedly made it necessary. Daniel called Dr. Bell on a recorded line with the detective present. She confirmed the signature image was hers, but denied signing the document. The language about auditory distress came from an evaluation written 2 years earlier, after Owen received his hearing device. "Who had that report?" Daniel asked. "You, the school, your insurer, and Mr. Cross's protection office," she said. He requested it for emergency planning. Adrian joined the call after the detective contacted him. "Medical files are routinely incorporated into risk protocols," he said. "That does not mean my office created the transfer." "Who did?" Daniel asked. "I am trying to determine that. You knew family court might become involved before we found the petition. I knew any missing child case involving disputed decisions could lead there. Did you know about this form?" "No." The denial came without hesitation. The destination listed on the transfer was Harrow Glen Youth Stabilization Center, a private facility 70 miles west of the airport. Its admissions director said no patient named Owen Mercer had arrived. The medical transport company produced a dispatch log showing that a van had been assigned to collect O.M. Minor from the Mercer training site at 10:25. The trip was canceled 12 minutes later through an encrypted contractor portal. "Canceled by whom?" the detective asked. The company could see only a client code, C17. Crestline Response Services used C17 for protected minors. Martin Voss insisted it referred to a training exercise. Lila examined the dispatch metadata. The cancellation did not stop the vehicle. It changed the destination field. The final location had been deleted from the customer-facing log, but the van's insurance tracker preserved mileage. It traveled 38 miles after leaving the training facility, stopped for 9 minutes, then continued another 24 miles before the tracker was disabled. Maya spread a printed road map across one of Elena's boxes. 38 miles west is Harrow Glen, she said. Daniel followed the route with his finger. "And 24 miles after that?" "There are 3 towns," the detective replied. 2 hospitals and a private residential school. Lila found the vehicle's fuel card purchase near the second town. The receipt identified a driver named Colin Price, a former Mercer extraction specialist now employed by Crestline. Adrian had trained him. The detective requested a location warrant for Price's phone. Before it was approved, his device went offline. Daniel studied the medical file again. A phrase near the bottom had been copied from the old psychological report. "Patient becomes more compliant when paternal contact is reduced." Dr. Bell had never written compliant. Her original sentence said Owen became quieter when separated from Daniel during treatment. Someone had changed observation into justification. Maya touched the corner of the page. "They needed people to believe he was safer without you." The timestamp completed the pattern. The false threat had justified the flight. The fake flight had justified the search. The search had made Daniel appear reckless. Now the medical file offered a reason to keep Owen away even after he was found. This was not a plan built around hiding a child forever. It was built around making every attempt to recover him look like proof Daniel should not have him. Lila's computer sounded. The insurer's tracker had uploaded one final location before shutting down, a service road behind Briar House, the private residential school 24 miles beyond Harrow Glen. Its website promised discretion, controlled contact, and court-compliant stabilization. Daniel knew the name. Laura had toured Briar House after the attack, 6 years earlier, and rejected it because the rooms locked from the outside. The detective reached for the warrant application. He faced Maya. "You stay here." She did not argue this time. That frightened him more than resistance would have. Then Maya lifted the medical form. "Mr. Mercer, this copy says he arrived there yesterday." Daniel took it from her. Beneath the deleted destination field was a pre-filled admission date. One day before Owen disappeared. The warrant reached Briar House at 4:17 in the afternoon. Rain had thinned to mist over the cedar roofs and stone walls. The school called itself a residential stabilization center, but the locked gate, privacy fencing, and frosted windows made it look designed to keep the outside world from asking questions. Daniel arrived with the detective, 2 county officers, Lila Chen, and a child welfare representative named Mara Holt. Maya and Elena remained at a nearby diner under police protection. Daniel had promised not to place Maya in another restricted search. The director, Dr. Stephen Hale, met them with an attorney. "We have no patient registered under Owen Mercer," Hale said. The detective handed him the warrant. "Then this should be brief." Hale read it. It covers intake records, residential rooms, transport logs, and communication related to the minor. It does not authorize disruption of other residents. Beyond Hale, every interior door required a badge. White noise machines hummed along the corridor. "Where is my son?" Hale addressed the detective. "Any child in our care is protected by confidentiality. You just said he was not here." "I said no one is registered under that name." The intake register showed no Owen Mercer, but a handwritten notation beside an anonymous case number read "Auditory accommodation required." The admission time was 11:18. The transport van's tracker had reached the property at 11:12. Hale claimed the entry belonged to another child. Mara requested the child's age and referral source. The attorney objected, then produced a sealed file containing only initials, O.L. Owen's middle name was Lawrence. The referral used an emergency protective alias, a procedure sometimes used when a kidnapping threat existed. It listed Crestline Response Services as the referring authority and pending judicial confirmation under guardian. "Show us the child," the detective said. Hale refused until a judge clarified whether the alias fell within the warrant. For 23 minutes, officers waited while attorneys argued by phone. Daniel heard a piano somewhere beyond the locked doors. The same 3 notes repeated, stopped, and began again. Owen used to play those notes with Laura when his hearing device overwhelmed him. Daniel moved toward the sound. An officer blocked him. "Do not make this harder. My son is behind that door." "We do not know that." Daniel stepped back. Adrian's case depended on presenting him as a man who ignored every boundary when afraid. The judge extended the warrant. Hale opened the residential wing. The piano room was empty. The keys moved under an automated practice program. Someone had selected the tune, but no one could prove who. At the end of the second-floor hall, Mara stopped beside a door whose observation panel had been covered from inside. "Why is that blocked?" "The resident is sensitive to visual stimulation," Hale said. The detective unlocked it. Owen sat on the floor beside the bed, one hand pressed over his left ear. His hearing device was gone. Daniel entered slowly and knelt. "Owen." The boy looked from Daniel to Adrian, who had arrived behind the search team with 2 attorneys and a court officer. Owen moved closer to the wall. "It is me," Daniel said. "They said you signed the transfer." "I did not. They showed me your approval." "It was false." Owen looked at the adults in the doorway. "Which part?" Daniel held out his empty hands. "You do not have to come closer. Just tell Mara whether you want to stay here." Hale objected that Owen had been medicated for acute distress. Mara asked what medication and under whose authority. The chart listed 1 dose of a mild sedative approved by a telehealth physician working for Crestline. Dr. Nora Bell had not prescribed it. Owen shook his head. "I was not panicking until they locked the door." Mara recorded the statement. Daniel asked who brought him there. Owen looked at Adrian. "Mr. Cross said the plane was not safe. He said Dad knew the second place." Adrian stayed outside the room. "I told you the plan changed because of a verified threat. You told me not to make it worse for my father. I told you cooperation would keep everyone safe." Daniel stood. "Stop speaking to him." Adrian's attorney stepped forward. "Mr. Cross acted under emergency protection authority granted in the family security plan." The detective asked to see it. A court officer handed over a newly filed order. The petition had been submitted less than an hour earlier. It requested temporary suspension of Daniel's unsupervised custody, pending a risk assessment. Attached were the false flight records, airport reports, Daniel's statement accepting responsibility for Maya's actions, and a psychologist's summary portraying him as volatile. A judge had granted a 72-hour protective hold. Owen had been found, but Daniel could not take him home. This order was built on falsified evidence, Daniel said. That is an argument for the hearing, Adrian's attorney replied. Mara read the order. The child cannot remain here. This facility accepted him under an alias without confirmed guardianship and administered medication on a disputed referral. Hope rose, then disappeared with her next words. He will be transferred to county protective care until the court reviews custody. No, Owen said. The boy stared at the court officer. Every time someone says they are moving me somewhere safe, I end up farther away. Mara crouched beside him. You have the right to tell the court that. Do I have the right to stay with my dad? No one answered at once. Owen reached beneath the mattress and pulled out a small bird folded from intake paper. One wing bent backward. He placed it in Daniel's palm. Mom changed her mind, he whispered. What do you mean? About him. His gaze shifted toward Adrian. Mara allowed Daniel 5 supervised minutes before county staff prepared the transfer. Daniel sat on the floor across from Owen. I should have listened before today. Owen touched the bare place behind his ear. You always listen after something breaks. Daniel had no defense. I cannot take you home tonight. They said you would choose the company. I am not choosing it. Then why are they still winning? Because law moved through documents, not promises. Because Adrian had prepared his documents first. I do not know how to fix this yet, Daniel said. But I will not tell you everything is fine when it is not. Owen looked down at the paper bird. The real file was in Mom's blue box. Daniel remembered a cedar box Laura kept in the study. After her death, Adrian had cataloged its contents for the estate. What file? She said if anything happened, Mr. Cross was not supposed to decide for me. I heard them arguing. When? The night before the crash. A county worker entered to end the visit. Owen caught Daniel's sleeve. He knows I remember. Outside, Adrian waited near the stairs. Daniel approached him with the folded scrap. You told him. I approved this. I told him you would understand the necessity. You prepared a custody petition while we were searching. I prepared for the possibility that your actions would put him at further risk. You created that possibility. Adrian did not raise his voice. You involved a 12-year-old witness, interfered with secured sites, bypassed incident command, and allowed company systems to be used under your credentials. A court will examine facts, not grief. The locked room remained in Daniel's line of sight. For years, Adrian had been the man who arrived before danger and left after everyone felt safe. Now Daniel understood the advantage that gave him. Adrian was always the first person allowed to define what the danger was. Mara told Daniel that Owen would be moved to a county children's unit within the hour. Daniel would receive one supervised visit the next afternoon unless the court changed the order. The rescue ended with another transfer. As the county vehicle departed, Owen sat behind reinforced glass without his hearing device. He lifted the paper bird so Daniel could see the backward wing. Then he pointed once toward Adrian. The gesture did not prove a crime. It did prove Owen knew whom he feared. By morning, Adrian's petition had become the only story anyone wanted to discuss. Television panels replayed footage of Daniel entering restricted areas, arguing with officers, and standing beside Maya outside Gate 9. The missing child investigation had been replaced by a simpler narrative. A powerful father had lost control, endangered a poor girl, and turned a security failure into a public spectacle. The board scheduled an emergency session at 11. Daniel joined by video from a conference room in his attorney's office. Adrian sat at the far end of the board table, not as a defendant, but as interim incident director. 2 child custody attorneys and a representative from the company's insurers attended. The chairwoman spoke first. The company will comply with the supervised contact already ordered, the chairwoman said. But our risk council cannot support expanded access while you retain operational control over systems implicated in the incident. Daniel understood the condition before anyone named it. What would change that assessment? A formal separation from operations and a temporary assignment of your voting authority to the independent committee. And if I refuse? The current risk statement remains in place. Mr. Cross has advised that expanded contact would be premature while the command conflict continues. No one used the word exchange. Corporate control had simply been turned into a factor in a custody recommendation. Daniel faced Adrian across the screen. "Did you help draft this?" Adrian folded his hands. "I advised the board that divided command creates risk. You told Owen I would choose the company. I told him you would make the decision that protected him." The chairwoman warned Daniel not to turn the session into a personal accusation. He asked for the transfer documents to be sent to his attorney. Then he disconnected without signing. His lawyer stared at the dark screen. "They expected you to bargain." So did Adrian. "You understand what refusal means? They can remove you permanently." Daniel closed the laptop. "Then they remove me." The words cost more than he expected. Mercer Sentinel had begun in a rented room with 2 borrowed servers. He had treated the company as proof that surviving Laura's death had led to something useful. Letting it go felt less like resigning than admitting how much of his life he had hidden inside it. But Owen had asked why they were still winning. Daniel signed a separate statement surrendering operational authority immediately and placing his shares in a temporary blind voting arrangement that Adrian could not control. The board accepted within 12 minutes. Adrian called him directly. "That was unnecessary. It removed the choice you built the petition around. You think giving up control proves stability?" "No. I think it proves you misunderstood what I was protecting." Adrian did not end the call. "You still think the company is yours to sacrifice," he said. "My brother died at St. Vincent's when security code from a Mercer subsidiary failed during the hospital attack. You sent lawyers, paid the families, and kept the product launch." Daniel remembered the settlement conference and the funeral he had not attended. "I was wrong. You were predictable," Adrian said. "Laura saw it. Owen has lived under it. I will not let him become another cost your board explains away." "Then you should have taken me to court." "You had no right to take my son. I prepared for the moment your choices became evidence." Adrian ended the call. An hour later, Daniel's attorney received notice that his supervised visit with Owen had been postponed pending a new behavioral review. The punishment came quickly enough to feel personal, but it remained hidden inside procedure. Across town, Elena's attorney was challenging the concession termination when an online article appeared accusing Maya's family of seeking a private settlement from Daniel. It quoted an unnamed airport source who claimed Elena had demanded money and permanent employment. Neither statement was true. Photographers gathered outside their apartment building. Elena called Daniel. "This ends now," she said. "Maya is not speaking to police again. She is not going to court. She is not helping you find another piece of anything. I understand." "No, you do not. You lose a company and still have a house, lawyers, and people who answer your calls. We lose one contract, and strangers decide we planned the whole thing." Maya spoke in the background. "Aunt Elena." "No." Daniel did not ask Elena to reconsider. He gave her attorney the contact information for the investigator handling the leak and instructed his own public relations team to release no statement about Maya without Elena's approval. That afternoon, Mara Holt brought Owen to a supervised therapy session. Daniel was not allowed inside, but Mara later delivered a folded worksheet Owen had asked her to preserve as part of his statement. It was not shaped like a bird. The paper had been creased into a grid. Several boxes were shaded, forming 6 numbers. Mara said, "He told me you would know where they belong." Daniel did not. Maya would have. He called Elena once, explained that Owen had sent a possible location, and said he would respect any answer. Maya came to the phone. "Read the numbers." Daniel did. "They are locker coordinates," she said. "The old terminal storage wall uses row, column, then key number. Owen watched me put polish tins there when the stand was crowded." Elena refused to let Maya return to Astor. She did, however, allow the detective to question her by video, while officers searched the locker. Inside, they found Owen's hearing device wrapped in a cleaning cloth. The outer casing had been damaged. Its local memory module was still intact. Lila Chen recovered 4 minutes of broken audio. A door closed. Wheels rolled over a metal seam. Owen asked where they were going. An unidentified man said, "Your father approved the second location." Owen answered, "Then why did Mr. Cross tell me not to call him?" Static covered the reply. Later, Adrian's voice appeared clearly. "Cooperate now, and Daniel will have fewer reasons to make this difficult. You said the plane was safer. The situation changed. Did Dad know before Gate 9? A long gap followed. Adrian said, "Your father will do what he always does when the company is threatened." The recording ended before Owen reached Briar House. It showed manipulation, not the full plan. Adrian's attorney would argue that he was calming a frightened child during a legitimate emergency transfer. Lila found encrypted fragments beyond the recovered audio, but the missing sections could not be restored without the original Mercer device certificate. Only Adrian's security office still held a valid copy. Daniel proposed a test. Lila created a false recovery package labeled as if it contained the deleted portion of Owen's recording. Daniel's attorney mentioned its existence during a scheduled call with the board's counsel, knowing the information would travel through the same legal network supporting Adrian. At 2:14 the next morning, someone attempted to access the package. The request used a credential assigned to Adrian's office and originated from a secure device registered at his home. For 20 seconds, Daniel believed they had him. Then, Lila showed the second screen. The connection passed through a remote maintenance relay. His team can claim the device was spoofed. Was it? I cannot prove it was not. The trap had created suspicion, not final validation. By sunrise, Adrian's attorneys filed a complaint accusing Daniel, Lila, and Maya of unlawfully obtaining a minor's protected communications and data. They requested seizure of every device connected to the investigation. Maya's name appeared repeatedly. Daniel called Elena before police could reach her. I am sorry. Elena's answer was exhausted rather than angry. Sorry does not remove her from the filing. No, but I will. He instructed his attorney to state under oath that Maya had no role in recovering or decrypting the device beyond identifying the locker pattern. The filing still remained. Maya asked to speak with him. They keep changing what the evidence means, she said. That is because no single piece can finish this. Then stop looking for one piece. Daniel waited. The camera at our stand, Maya said. It never used the airport network. My aunt would not pay for cloud storage. Daniel remembered the small recorder Elena had packed into a cardboard box. Adrian had erased the terminal's cameras because he controlled the system. He may never have known another camera was watching. The camera recorder from Elena's shoe shine stand had spent the night inside a cardboard box beneath her kitchen table. Airport police collected it under a preservation order. Lila Chen examined the device while every cable and transfer was recorded. The recorder was old enough to be inconvenient and simple enough to be trustworthy. It had no cloud connection or link to Mercer Sentinel. Its clock ran 4 minutes slow. That error became useful. The terminal cameras showed Owen entering the private lounge at 8:35. Elena's recorder showed him leaving the shoeshine chair at 8:39 by its own time, which meant 8:43 in the terminal system. The official record claimed he was already boarding the plane. Lila restored the damaged footage frame by frame. Owen appeared near the edge of the image beside a baggage cart. Adrian crossed behind him with 2 guards. Another child waited beyond the column in Owen's gray hoodie. The angle did not show faces clearly, but it showed Adrian opening a service door. Owen resisted. One guard bent toward him. The second child was guided toward the aircraft passage. Then Owen dropped the folded boarding pass beneath the polishing chair. Maya watched from Elena's apartment through a secure video call. She covered her mouth but said nothing. The detective asked Lila to enlarge the image. Do not sharpen what is not there, she said. I can clarify contrast. I cannot manufacture detail. The footage could not identify every face with forensic certainty. Adrian's attorneys would claim the man was another officer. Daniel did not need one image to carry the case. He and Lila arranged the evidence by time rather than accusation. The sequence was no longer a pile of unrelated anomalies. The recovery credential had been used at 7:58. Eli's drill release followed at 8:11, and Daniel's executive access was suspended at 8:30. The false passenger record appeared at 8:42. 1 minute later, Elena's camera showed Owen being diverted through the service door. By 8:46, Vehicle 14 was moving behind Gate 9. The medical transfer was dispatched at 10:25, even though the file supporting it had been prepared before the kidnapping threat. No single item explained the whole operation. Together, they left less and less room for coincidence. The detective obtained a warrant for the estate records cataloged after Laura's death. The blue cedar box was no longer in storage. Adrian's office had signed it out 6 months after the crash for guardianship continuity review. Adrian said the contents had been returned. The estate manager had no return receipt. Daniel's attorney contacted Laura's former lawyer, Margaret Shaw, who had retired to Vermont. Margaret remembered dividing Laura's instructions into two documents, a revocation removing Adrian as emergency guardian, and a separate designation naming his replacement. Did Laura complete either one? Daniel asked. She signed the revocation. She had not completed the replacement designation. Was the revocation effective? If notice was served. I need the archived file to confirm delivery. Why did she remove him? She believed someone inside your security circle was exaggerating threats to control her decisions. The courthouse scheduled the custody hearing for the next morning. Adrian arrived with 3 attorneys, the board chairwoman, and Martin Voss from Crestline. His position remained consistent. Owen had been moved under emergency authority after a credible threat. The substitute passenger had protected the child's location, and any procedural errors resulted from fragmented command. Owen testified by secure video with Mara Holt beside him. Adrian's attorney asked whether anyone had harmed him physically. No. Were you given food, medical care, and a safe room? Yes. Did Mr. Cross tell you he wanted money? No. Did he threaten to kill you or your father? No. The questions turned control into protection because it had left no bruise. Daniel's attorney did not ask Owen to describe fear in general terms. She asked, "Did you agree to be taken through Gate 9? No. Did your father approve it? They told me he did. Who told you? Mr. Cross. Did you ask to call your father? Yes. What happened? They said my hearing device could be tracked. Why did you leave clues? Owen looked toward the screen where Daniel sat. Because I did not know which adults were telling the truth. Adrian's attorney objected that a child's interpretation could not establish intent. The judge agreed that intent required corroboration. Daniel's attorney began the sequence. Eli's mother testified that the drill was arranged before the public threat became known. Dr. Bell confirmed her signature and clinical words had been reused without permission. Lila explained the stored biometric template and recovery credential. The airport detective presented the service road signal and independent camera footage. Mara read Owen's statement from Briarhouse. Elena testified that no one paid her family and that the recorder had remained disconnected from airport systems. Martin Voss claimed Crestline believed the exercise was authorized. By whom? The judge asked. Voss looked toward Adrian's table. Adrian's attorney objected before he answered. The judge ordered him to respond. Executive protection, Voss said. That is a department. Voss swallowed. Mr. Cross approved the operational brief. Adrian leaned toward his counsel but did not speak. His attorney argued that approval of a protective exercise did not prove unlawful custody. Adrian possessed emergency authority, and the guardianship petition showed he expected court review. Daniel's attorney placed the petition beside the medical transfer. The petition was filed after Owen was found. The transfer file was created before the threat. Which emergency existed when these documents were prepared? Adrian answered for himself. Daniel Mercer had ignored repeated warnings. The board vote increased the risk. I prepared contingencies. You prepared a substitute child? I prepared misdirection. You prepared a false medical transfer? I prepared continuity. You told Owen his father approved? I prevented a frightened child from resisting a movement that had to happen quickly. No confession arrived. Adrian continued converting each choice into procedure. Daniel asked permission to speak. The judge warned him not to argue with the witness. Daniel faced Adrian. You said I would choose the company. I said you would act predictably. I resigned before this hearing. That does not erase the decisions that brought us here. No. It proves you built your plan around a man who no longer had to exist. Adrian's expression changed for the first time, only slightly. Daniel continued. You did not protect Owen from a threat. You created the conditions, controlled the records, moved him without consent, and then used my response as evidence against me. Adrian replied, I removed a child from an unstable environment. You created the unstable environment, then called yourself the rescue. The judge stopped the exchange. A court clerk entered with a sealed digital record from Margaret Shaw's archived files. Laura's signed revocation had been found. It removed Adrian Cross by name and became effective upon service. A separate draft naming a replacement remained unsigned. Attached was a memorandum documenting Laura's fear that he had exaggerated threats, restricted her contact, and used family security procedures to override her decisions. The documents did not prove every act committed after her death. They proved Laura had withdrawn her trust before Adrian built his claim to authority. The final attachment was a certified delivery record, showing Adrian received the revocation 3 days before the crash. Adrian's attention moved from the screen to Owen. For years, he had depended on being the first person allowed to define danger. Now the timeline, the witnesses, the independent footage, and Laura's own words had defined him instead. The court did not deliver a dramatic verdict that morning. It issued orders. Adrian Cross's emergency guardianship petition was vacated. His access to Owen, Mercer family records, and every Mercer Sentinel security system was suspended. The judge referred the false medical transfer, substituted passenger, altered biometric record, and unauthorized relocation to federal investigators and the district attorney. Crestline Response Services was ordered to preserve every communication, contract, and payment connected to Gate 9. Briarhouse faced a separate child welfare review for accepting Owen under an unconfirmed alias and medicating him without valid authority. Adrian stood beside his attorneys while the system he had learned to manipulate began naming each action plainly. Not protection, not continuity, evidence. The judge then addressed Maya. You were described in filings as an intruder, an opportunist, and a possible participant in a threat, she said. The record now shows that you identified the first inconsistency, preserved information others ignored, and repeatedly told the truth, while adults with authority tried to redefine it. The concession authority withdrew Elena's termination notice. Airport police confirmed Maya would face no charge. The court ordered the false allegations about payment demands removed from the custody record. Maya did not smile. She only loosened her grip on Elena's hand. Daniel asked to speak before the hearing closed. He faced the judge, the board representatives, Owen's screen, and the reporters permitted inside. My son left warnings before he disappeared, he said. I missed them because I believed expensive systems were more reliable than a frightened child. I also allowed Adrian to become the person Owen expected to see when danger arrived, because I was too often somewhere else. He looked toward Maya. When she told me the truth, my first instinct was to ask whether she belonged near me. That failure was mine before any crime was proven. On the recording recovered from Owen's hearing device, the boy asked whether his father had approved the transfer. Adrian's unanswered pause played through the courtroom speakers. This time, no one interpreted it for him. 4 months later, the criminal investigation remained open. Adrian Cross had not been convicted. His attorneys challenged the search warrants, custody filings, and admissibility of Owen's recording. Crestline blamed a breakdown in command. Briarhouse called its failures procedural. Mercer Sentinel hired an outside monitor to review emergency transfers Adrian had approved. Nothing ended cleanly. Daniel did not return as chief executive. The board offered him a ceremonial title after the stock recovered, but he declined. He kept a non-operating advisory role with no authority over family security decisions. 3 independent directors controlled the systems he had once treated as extensions of himself. The reforms were practical. No single protection officer could authorize a child's transfer. Stored biometric templates could no longer replace a live scan. Medical relocation required confirmation from the treating physician. Every emergency guardianship request triggered outside review. Daniel signed the changes without placing his name on them. Owen came home after the protective hold ended, but home did not feel safe simply because the doors were familiar. He checked the locks twice before bed. He sometimes removed his hearing device and kept it beneath his pillow. On days when Daniel arrived late, Owen stopped asking why. That frightened Daniel more than anger would have. Their therapist advised him not to fill every distance with explanations. Daniel began leaving his phone outside the room during appointments. He learned to answer questions without defending the decision that had caused them. One evening, Owen asked, "Would you have given up the company if they had not taken me?" Daniel could have said yes. Instead, he said, "I do not know." Owen studied him. "That is a bad answer." "It is the true one." The answer repaired nothing, but it gave them a place to begin. Daniel stopped bringing gifts after visits. He stopped arranging private events meant to prove how much time they could spend together. Some Saturdays, he and Owen sat at the airport observation deck with hot chocolate and watched planes take off without speaking about Gate 9. On other Saturdays, Owen refused to go. Daniel went home with him. Maya returned to school full-time after Elena's contract was restored through the concession appeal. The agreement included clearer protections for family-run vendors, but Elena refused every offer that tied her business to Mercer Sentinel. She accepted a new camera system only after the airport agreed it would belong to her. Reporters continued seeking Maya out. She gave one statement through her attorney. She said she had not saved Owen because she was special. She had noticed what people with authority had decided not to look at. After that, she stopped answering questions. Daniel did not adopt Maya, pay for a private academy, or turn her into a public symbol. When Elena needed legal help with the false articles, Daniel provided a contact and stepped aside. The two families stayed connected by choice. Owen visited the shoeshine stand after it reopened. At first, he remained near the entrance where he could see every exit. Maya did not ask whether he was afraid. She handed him a brush and showed him how to recognize when someone favored one foot. "You look at the heel," she said. "People tell the truth with whatever touches the ground." Owen said, "That sounds made up." "It is still true." He began helping her fold receipts when business was slow. Most went into the recycling bin. One remained beneath the glass counter, the boarding pass he had used to warn Daniel, flattened rather than shaped into anything. Beside it was a card in Owen's handwriting. "She saw me when everyone else saw a passenger record." Elena allowed the display because it did not carry Daniel's name. When federal investigators charged two Crestline employees, Owen asked whether Adrian would go to prison. Daniel said the process could take a long time. "What if he says he was protecting me?" "He will." "What if people believe him?" "Some will." Owen adjusted the device behind his left ear. "Then what was the point?" "The point is that he does not get to decide the truth alone anymore." Owen did not look satisfied, but he nodded. That evening, they returned to the observation deck. A silver jet moved toward the runway, and Owen's hand rose toward his hearing device. Daniel noticed. He did not ask whether Owen was all right. He did not promise that no one would ever hurt him again. He placed his hand on the bench between them. For several minutes, Owen watched the aircraft climb through the clouds. Then he reached across and took it. The fear had not disappeared. Trust had not returned all at once. But this time, when Owen chose whom to believe, his father was still there.